Hey guys, Brian from WorkshopAddict.com, and there are a lot of new jigsaws on the market right now, and Ridgid just topped that off with one more. This is their Octane model. It is a brushless 18-volt jigsaw, model number R8832. In our case, that model number ended with a B because this came bare tool. Now, Milwaukee came out with a saw not too long ago that is very similar in size and actually very similar in specs to this. And we're going to kind of touch on some of that later, but we're also going to compare it a little bit to the Bosch and the DeWalt a little bit in this video, but we're going to go on and compare all 3 or 4 of these tools in a later video. So while we're going to just kind of touch on some key features that each of them have, this case here, we're going to just look at the Ridgid and keep looking at this one more in depth than we will later. So to start off, this has very similar to specs to the Milwaukee, 0 to 3,500 strokes per minute, 1-inch stroke, has a variable speed trigger and a variable speed dial for maximum speed control on the top. Differences are the Ridgid has a stop button on the top. So if you want to put it there to put it in a case in the back of your truck, it will simply not work. The LED light will come on, but that's about all that will happen. Now you can move that up from 1 to 5 to control your variable speed, and just past 5 you'll find a line start mode. This line start mode starts the tool off slow. So you pull the trigger all the way in, and as the tool senses you get into the material, it will then speed up the cut to full speed and give you full use of your variable speed trigger. Now using this on 3/4 inch pine, we did not get the line start to work that well. It was slow, it didn't really sense that we were into the wood up until the end, or unless we really pushed it to get through to give some resistance to the saw. So this line start mode isn't going to work for everything. It worked excellent when we went to dimensional lumber, but I don't see this as a huge tool for dimensional lumber. I think you're going to use it in a little more delicate situation. Although this size does lead it to be more of a utilitarian tool than a fine woodworking tool. So maybe in fiberglass or other models like that, that line start will work. I'm going to give you my opinion on it. I don't like it because I use the variable speed trigger. I know to start out slow on my own. I can adjust that to the material I'm working with and not deal with a computerized setting. Everyone to their own. We all use tools differently. The variable speed trigger works excellent, just like you would expect. The grip on the top is pure Ridgid. If you like the Ridgid tools, that texture grip on the top, you'll like this. There is a small trigger in the back that allows you to turn on the LED cut light. That's awesome. Again, pure Ridgid, just right there. Moving on to dust collection. It has the similar style dust collection as the Milwaukee. So you just slide this tube underneath the bottom, push it into place, which the plastic piece on here, there's a little like rubber bump nipple that sticks up, and that slows you the first couple times pushing it in. It quickly wears itself in, so it will slide in and out, but know the first time that you do it, you might struggle. We didn't have as good of luck with this dust collection as we did with the Milwaukee, and I think there's 2 reasons. First, the Milwaukee has a dust blower that you can turn on or off. The Ridgid's dust blower is constantly on. So we seem to fight ourselves a little bit with the suction of the vacuum in the back and the amount of dust that built up in front. We didn't clear the dust in front, but yet the dust blower wasn't allowing it to push it out of the way. It was a fight between the 2, I think, and neither one really won the battle. So we ended up with mediocre dust collection. Worse, my favorite vacuum will not hook up to this. And none of my vacuums in the shop really did, and they will hook up to the Milwaukee, which gives you a much larger surface area to hook up to. I ended up having to duct tape something on here. No matter what we're going to do, we were going to try out that dust collection for you guys, so we made it work. We had a pretty good vac on the back of this too. So I was surprised as far as how mediocre the dust collection works. Now looking at this now with the Nomar skid plate off, I can tell you that without that skid plate, dust collection is really going to be bad because you're pulling all the air from a long ways away from that blade. Now this Nomar skid plate is easy on and easy off, But what I'm going to tell you is there are 2 screws that you must remove first that are in this Nomar skid plate, holding it attached to the unit. I found that kind of awkward because if you're switching between metal and wood, or if you're going to a plastic or something you want to take care of, you want to be able to switch that fairly quick and without tools. This makes you get out a Phillips screwdriver and remove those 2 screws to be able to use this Nomar skid plate or to remove it. Not a bad deal. Just a little different in my mind. I think they're setting it up to say, you know what, 99% of the people are going to leave that skid plate on. So let's just make sure it stays in place and nobody says, hey, it's just flying off when it shouldn't be. Just a guess. The bevel situation is very similar to the Milwaukee. You push this lever over and then you can push it forward, and there are detents at 45 degrees, 0 degrees, and 45 the other way. Nothing in between, and no real scale that's going to give you that perfect number. I don't think that that matters. Now, the lock does lock it in very solid, and while it does look like it's moving around quite a bit in between, once you lock this down, you are very, very solidly set at 0 and 45, and it is very accurate. So that works excellent. Similar to the Milwaukee, you also have oscillation, which is 0 for no oscillation, which is great for metals. And then you can move yourself up from 1 to 3 as far as how much oscillation you would like. That lever works great, and it's perfect. It's not going to get hit. It's a very small turn dial. So we found that that worked excellent. The quick blade change, which is tool free, is very similar to the Milwaukee as far as where it is up front. You just push this over. The one thing that I'll say, this feels like it's metal, which I like, but it's not as smooth as the Milwaukee. Ours feels like there's a few little burrs that are in there, but it's not a big deal at all. The more you use it, the smoother it becomes, which it wears itself in. Inserting the blade is very simple, and we found that the system can actually catch the blade and hold it before it's all inserted completely. So that could be good or bad. We did not try to use this without the blade inserted fully, but if you found a blade that you couldn't get in there all the way, like right there, we had one in about 1/4 of the way and it just grabbed. There's one in halfway and it's hanging onto it well. I don't think you're gonna have trouble with this unit not hanging onto a blade. It seems like it really likes to grab them and hang onto them and keep them fairly straight. Depending on what you're cutting is where you're going to find different blade deflection and different types of cutting issues. You know, when we're cutting through pine or anything like that, the blades that we had in here were just solid, ready to rip, rock and roll. Cutting through metal, the unit changed slightly as far as how it liked to cut, but at the same point, it cut very well. As I said in the last video, I have a bandsaw in the shop. If I'm gonna cut metal, 99% chance says I'm gonna pull that out and cut it. Now, if I have to get inside and do some circular type of pattern, I'm gonna try to do a hole saw with that. But if I can't, this is kind of my last go-to. With that said, it works fine for metal. The variable speed trigger is great, and I can adjust the dial on top to where I want it. Now, what's really nice about this is there's a button on the side that allows you to lock this unit on. So if you want to just get your hand off that trigger, use this more like you might a barrel grip, just get a little bit more grip behind it, a little bit more control, and get your hand away from the trigger and move things around. The cool part about that is you can still adjust the speed with your variable speed dial on top, because it has to be full throttle no matter where you're going to get that to lock in place. And if you happen to remove the battery while that is locked in place, when you put the battery back in, it will not turn itself back on without you removing and resetting that trigger. So it's a good safety mechanism that's in there. Overall, what do I think about this tool? You know, I actually like it. There's two things that kind of get me here. And one is I feel that there was a battle between Ridgid and Milwaukee inside TTI as to who got what features on their saw. They all have kind of the same specs. few little differences here and there, but I really like that the Milwaukee has a dust blower that you can turn off and a little bit more dust control. So if you're on the job site, inside house, working on your own stuff in your basement, and you don't want to have the dust, the Milwaukee is the way to go. If you need the line start feature, then the Ridgid's the way to go. I don't know that anyone needs it. It's a cool feature that's there. If you're into the Ridgid battery system, you're not gonna miss a whole lot from the Milwaukee, as you would think it's just gonna be dust collection, and if you use the dust collection or not. Something that I think both of these companies could come out with and really help us out is a smaller battery. You know, Bosch has their small Core 18V 4.0 amp hour battery, and it's nice, very thin, and also pretty powerful. And it helps make a fairly small, maybe medium-sized saw a little bit smaller, and the weight is not there. Where we're running an Octane battery on this, which is a 6 amp hour battery, so we get all the power. And it's a larger battery, makes this tool just a touch heavier in the back. Not a big deal, but for the amount of use that this jigsaw is gonna get, it's a smaller tool. It does, I mean, you could run it all day on this battery and hardly lose any power. It'd be nice to see a small 1P 4 amp hour battery that we could slap on the back of this and still get what Ridgid calls the Octane performance. They do warn you inside the manual that if you are getting timeouts from this tool and you're not using an Octane battery, to please upgrade to the Octane battery. And I think that a smaller Octane battery could kind of help us alleviate having to have this large battery on a tool that's not generally needed to have this large Octane battery. Same with Milwaukee. If we could just get a 4 amp hour 1P small clean 21700 battery, that'd be awesome. Other than that, guys, this is a great jigsaw. I think most people that are gonna pick it up and use it are gonna be for more of the, well, this is a one-off thing that I'm doing. It's probably not gonna be your mainstream woodworking tool, just because most of those guys like the barrel grips. But for someone like us who's gonna use it for installing speakers, doing something in fiberglass, or just this one-off cut on a car, I think it's perfect. It's a decent size, it's got a ton of power, and the grip and everything is right there and very familiar. So if you're looking at this, you know, check it out at Home Depot. It is not on their website right now, so I'm not able to read you any of the wonderful first reviews that come out about it. I apologize for that. But you can leave your comments below and we can have a lot of fun with that. I'll make sure that I read them and get back with you as soon as possible. We appreciate your time. As always, we have a lot of cool giveaways going on right now, and we try to keep them going all the time to give back to what you do to support us. We appreciate that all the time, guys. Have a great day.